Good morning, friends. It's good to see you this morning. Welcome to our Tuesday Bible study. We'll look at a passage from the fourth chapter of Mark today, beginning with the 35th verse. We read, "On the same day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, 'Let us cross over to the other side.' Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other small boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was filling with water. But Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they woke him and said to him, 'Rabbi, do you not care that we are perishing?' Then Jesus arose and rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But Jesus said to the disciples, 'Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?' And they were terrified, and said to one another, 'Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" And may the Lord add his blessing to this reading from his word. You know, oftentimes Satan tempts us to doubt, to rely on ourselves rather than relying on the things that God told us to trust. We tend to rely on our own wisdom, our own abilities, rather than trusting God for our strength, for our direction. And the Bible warns us, "Lean not to thine own understanding." And yet time and time again we find ourselves doing that. We just, it seems like, have this tendency to forget God. But he doesn't forget us, and he's always calling us to return to him, to cross over to his love, to cross over to his forgiveness. The people of God have had problems doing this all along. The Israelites in Egypt forgot God, and so they wound up being enslaved. And in bondage, they cried out to God to save them, and he sent Moses, who led them out of Egypt. And as soon as they got to the Red Sea and saw chariots coming behind them with Pharaoh's army in full flight, they panicked and told Moses, "Were there not enough graves in Egypt to bury us, that you had to bring us out here to die in the wilderness?" And Moses said, "The Lord's going to fight for you. You're going to see his salvation today. Just be quiet and watch." And God parted the sea, and they went across, the scriptures tell us, on dry land. They passed over to the other side. But then it didn't take long, and they forgot God again. They started to get thirsty, and they cried out to Moses, "Did you bring us all the way out here just to die of thirst? Give us some water." Another time they were afraid they were going to run out of food, even though they had all these herds and flocks, and they were telling Moses, "Look, did you bring us out of Egypt so we could all starve to death here?" And God sent them manna from heaven. Over and over again, they doubted God. They forgot that he had parted the sea for them. They forgot he provided the manna from heaven. That wasn't good enough. Then they wanted meat, and God provided them quail. Over and over and over, they doubted his provision. They doubted his power. They doubted his plan for them, until finally they refused even to go into the promised land, and God purged them in the wilderness of all the unbelievers. And then finally, those in this new generation of God's people were led by Joshua to the River Jordan. And there on the other side was the promised land. And as they stood there, God rolled the waters of the Jordan River back. And once again, his people crossed over on dry land into the land that God had promised them. Jesus told the disciples, let's pass over to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And the disciples, like the Israelites initially, they were glad to do it at the beginning when it was exciting. And for the disciples, getting in the boats and all, it was smooth sailing to start with. It was only when the tempests came, when the wind started blowing, when things looked kind of dicey, that they became panicked. When the water came crashing over the side, they lost their faith. They ran to find Jesus asleep and woke him up. Don't you care, they said, that we're drowning, that we're going to die? And so Jesus stood up and rebuked the wind and the waves. And then he turned around and rebuked his disciples and said, how is it that you're so afraid, that you're so filled with fear? How is it that you have no faith? Now, what do you think he was telling them they should have faith in? I believe he was telling them you should have faith that when I tell you, let's cross to the other side, that we're going to get there. That if I am telling you to come here, then I'm making provisions for you to get there. And it's the same for us as God's people today. If Jesus told his disciples to cross to the other side, then there's no storm that was going to stop them from getting there. And when Jesus calls us to do his bidding, to cross to the other side, there's nothing that's going to stop us from accomplishing his will if we place our trust in him. If we set aside the fear and the worry, well, what if? We've killed a lot of ministry through the years with those two words. What if? What if? What if? What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? We can't forget who it is that we serve. We serve the God who created all that is, who knows more than we know ourselves about ourselves. The God who can guide every step of our journey into full peace and full purpose and full joy if we just trust him to do it. And the Spirit is crying out to us today to place all of our faith in God, to come with him in this walk, to turn away from our doubts and our fears that the enemy would use to destroy us, to cripple our ministries. We need to remember who we serve. Remember that God is always with us. Don't let storms and trials of life bring doubt into our heart about God's love for us, about his purpose and his plan for our lives. Instead, when you have trials and troubles, do like Paul and allow them to strengthen your dependence not on yourself, but on Christ. Remember that the one who told you to cross over will part the seas for us. The one who has told us to move forward and cross over will roll back the waters of the river so we can go over to dry land. The one who told us to cross over will speak a word of command and still the storms in our hearts and in our souls. If we will take those steps of faith, if we will get in the boat, if we will walk and move forward, he will always make a way. Jesus has given us a task as his church, as his ambassadors, a task to go and to proclaim salvation to the lost, hope to those who have no hope, and to show them through our own lives how faith can work strength, can bring peace, and can do miracles, and that it can do the same for them. So when Jesus calls us to go over, we have but one right answer, and that is, yes, Lord, I will go. And then to follow wherever it is the Master leads us, because he will always bring us safely through where we can't go ourselves until finally we stand firmly on the other side, ultimately in the kingdom of heaven. Place your trust in the one who will always make a way for you, whether it's through the midst of the sea or through a myriad of what you see as insurmountable problems. Christ always makes a way. Sola Gracia, friends.